Hi everyone, hope you're all doing really well and welcome to the Déjà Vu Book Tag. So this was an original tag created by Walker7. I will leave a link to his original video down below. I haven't been tagged by anyone to do this, but I saw it and it's all about rereading books, which I do all the time. I love rereading, so I thought it was a perfect book tag to be doing. So without any further ado, let's get into the prompts. So number one is, do you reread and how often? Yes, I do. Over half the books that I read last year were rereads. I haven't reread as many this year because I've been trying to read more new to me books, and especially since sort of joining YouTube. But yeah, I definitely reread books. I've already reread a couple of books this year. It's just so much fun to relive the story again. Number two is, why do you / don't you reread? So because I do reread, I can tell you why. And honestly, I just love being back in the story with those characters and feeling all the same emotions that I felt the first time I read that book, and picking up on things that were foreshadowed. It's really fun as well to see sort of at the start of the book and know where they're going, and sort of then to sort of see them go on that journey and understand what the end point is. And it's just so much fun, and it just gives me a bigger appreciation of the story as a whole when I'm able to understand the context of that, you know, this scene within the wider story, or this book within the wider series. You know, it's really fun to be able to do that with books. Number three is, what have been some of your favourite books to reread? So this is going to be quite a list. The first one is The Witchlands by Susan Dennard. This is a book series that is complex and has so much foreshadowing and is almost very complicated, but not in a bad way, just in a good sort of fantasy way, that it almost requires rereading to fully enjoy it. And I love rereading books, and I love just going back and reliving with everything with these characters, and especially picking up on all the things that she foreshadows in the earlier books that then sort of get revealed in this book. You know, it's such a fantastic series to reread again and again, and I honestly want to reread it already. Another one that I love rereading is The Chronicles of Ancient Darkness by Michelle Paver. This is a middle grade YA sort of series set in sort of like the Bronze Age, and it's just such an amazing setting and time period that I've never seen anywhere else before, and it's just such a great story to relive, and I just love going back to this world with these characters, and yeah, it's just a really, really great series that I just absolutely love. Another one that I reread all the time is Eragon by Christopher Paolini. I just love that series so much. It gets far too much hate, or at least, you know, a lot of people sort of try to brush it off and not very good. Excuse you, we all know Eragon. It's absolutely fantastic, and I absolutely love that book series, and yeah, I reread it all the time because it's just so good. The one that I reread earlier this year that I reread all the time is Six of Crows duology. Again, just love these characters, love this plot. It's so fun just to be back in this world with these people that it's just such a comfort read for me as well. I just really love it. Another one that I actually read a lot of the time is Rebel with the Sands by Almond Hamilton. This is a sort of quite underrated book series, I think, and it's just really fun. It's such an interesting sort of rebellion, revolution story, and the characters are all really compelling, and I can't put my finger on it, but it's just so fun to go back to this world time and time again and see them go through their journey over again. I just really like it. Another one that I reread all the time and have reread earlier this year is The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. Again, just one that I love being back with the characters. I love being back in that story with her writing as well, and the setting, and just the atmosphere and the magic and things. Like, I just love that series so much, and it just gets better and better with every reread, and I actually read it with audiobooks earlier this year for the first time, and that was a really fun experience too. Number four is, what would you like to reread? The first book that I really want to reread is Deep Light. This is a book that I didn't enjoy for like the first half. I've talked about it before in other videos. I just found it really difficult to read about this one character. You know, it was just really uncomfortable for me personally, and then as I sort of got through the book and got to the end, I absolutely adored this story and where it went and how it developed, and the setting and the descriptions and things. Like, I just absolutely love it, and I really want to go back and now appreciate the story for what it is now that I can read it and not be as put off as I was the first time I read it. Another book series that I'm desperate to reread is The Invisible Library by Genevieve Cogman. This is a sort of, it's got 7 books out in the series, they're all quite short, and it's just a really fun, almost Doctor Who-esque series about an interdimensional library, and they go to different time periods, and there's dragons and fae, and like, I've talked about this before. It's a completely nuts series that has just about everything you can think of in fantasy. You know, it's just so much fun. I really enjoy it, and I haven't reread it yet, and I really, really want to, especially with sort of the potential last book coming out later this year. But I don't actually own it all on paperback. I have the first 2 in physical form, and then I have the 7th one, and I don't have any of the rest of them because I listened to them all on audiobook, basically scanning my way through Audible for free audiobooks last year. So I do kind of need to get hold of copies of them to be able to reread the series. So yeah, this is one that I'm just desperate to reread. Another book that I really want to reread is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. One of my favourite books of all time is the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy. And when I first read Strange the Dreamer, I didn't really enjoy it. It didn't really live up to my expectations, so I just kind of forgot about it, didn't go back to it, and didn't read Mead of Nightmares. But in recent sort of like months, I've heard like other booktubers who I have very similar reading tastes to completely raving about Strange the Dreamer. You know, it's some of their favourite books. And it's just one that I kind of want to give a go now that, you know, my reading tastes have changed a bit more. I'm able to appreciate books in a better way than I did at the time when I read it. But one of the things that's really putting me off having to read it though is the fact that my copy of it is out at my dad's. I haven't been out at my dad's since last March, and even then I was only there for a couple of days, and I wasn't really thinking about books and things to take with me to read, so I do just need to go and get a hold of my copy and reread it because I want to see if my opinion on the book has changed. On a similar vein, The Lies of Locke Lamora. I DNF'd this book 2 chapters from the end. I think I really need to reread it and give it a go. Again, I've seen a lot of booktubers that I follow and stuff raving about this book, raving about this series, and I really want to just give it another go. See if, you know, as I said, my reading tastes have changed, I have matured a bit. I want to see if I can appreciate that book for what it is now. And if anything, finish it, because as I said, I was 2 chapters from the end and I DNF'd it. Another one I really want to read is the Percy Jackson series. I haven't read it in such a long time, and with everything about the show coming out hopefully soon and all that sort of jazz going on, I really just want to reread it and relive that world. And finally, I have actually just finished the 3rd book in the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, and I really want to reread this series already just to, again, now that I know where everything's going and what a lot of the things that happen in this book they become relevant in the 3rd book, and I kind of want to go back and reread this book just to understand that and read it with that context. So that's one that I definitely want to try again. Number 5 is, what book do you predict will be so good that you will want to reread it? I've just started Piranesi by Susanna Clarke, and that's already fantastic, and again it's one I've seen people raving about, and I think almost certainly I'm going to want to reread it once I know where the story goes and what all these opening chapters mean in the context of the wider story. Another one that I really want to read is Sword of Kaigan. That's one I think I will want to reread. Again, I've heard people raving about it, I'm almost certain I'm going to enjoy it, and if I enjoy a book then that usually means I'm going to reread it. Number 6 is, pick a book from your younger years that you think would be interesting to reread. So there's this one book called Dragon Rider by Cornelia Funk that I read several times. Like, I read and reread it a few times over the course of a few years when I was about 12, 13. I really want to give that one another go just to remind myself of that story, see if it holds up, because it was a really fun read. Another one that I really liked when I was younger was The Fire Within, this by Chris DeLacy. This is another dragon series that I don't think I ever actually finished at the time. I remember reading the first 4, and then what's the 5th book called? The red one. It's like Fire. I can't remember what it's called. But I remember it taking a complete left turn out of nowhere, and that really threw me, and I don't think I then read The Fire Awakening or whatever the last book's called. So I kind of want to go back, reread it, see if it holds up, see if I can get through the entire series and see what my thoughts are. But I did kind of go on to Goodreads and read the reviews for the last book, and a lot of people are like, yeah, it's like takes a huge nosedive. So a bit apprehensive, but I do want to try it again. And another book that I read when I was younger that I really want to try is Measle and the Wrath Monk by Ian Ogilvy. I loved this book series when I was about 10, 11. and I just really want to go back and reread it. I'm fairly sure I still have all my copies, again, out at my dad's house. Yeah, I just really want to reread it because it's a really funny series and I love it. Number 7 is tell us a series or book that's so big or complex you need to reread to better understand. I've already mentioned The Witchlands by Susan Dennard. This is one that just gets better and better with every reread that you do. And I already need to reread it because there's something that happens in this book that I was very confused about. There's these people that are like waking up and they've got different names and some are to be trusted and some aren't, and I think I need to go back and write down who's who because I'm still confused, but in like the best way possible, like not in a bad way. I love being confused when I read fantasy a lot of the time, so this is one that definitely just needs rereading a lot of the time, and it'll just enrich your experience with the series if you do go back and read the books time and time again. Another one that I would recommend rereading is The Betrayals by Bridget. Again, this is one that I don't quite understand the concept of. There's this thing in it called the Grand Jeu, and I to this day couldn't tell you what that is. It's got something to do with maths and music and then possibly like interpretive dance or something along those lines. I have no idea what it's supposed to be, but within the context of this world, it's like a thing that people can do, and then if you're really good at it, then that means you're like able to be like a politician, or you know, you're quite a smart person. It's almost like a sort of fancy exam or something. Like I said, I don't really understand a lot of what goes on in this book, but it's still a fantastic book, and I really just want to reread it because it's such a fun experience. One that I have already reread and I want to reread again is Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. This is another one that's just confusing but magical, and upon reread again, it's just one that you can just enjoy now that you know where it's going, and then again pick up on things that are said earlier and mentioned to understand the wider story that you're reading, and yeah, it's just a really great book to relive through. Number 8 is there a specific type of genre that you think is best / worst for reread potential? Fantasy, I think, is definitely the best for rereading. As I said with the books that I recommend rereading, you know, there's a lot of foreshadowing and there's a lot of just things I think in fantasy that you better understand and enjoy when you reread the book time and time again, and it's one that, like, you know, they're quite often, fantasy's more likely to be the more complex of the stories that you'll read, and I think it's just one of those ones that's more rewarding to reread time and time again because you'll pick up things, or you'll pick up world building things that you're able to imagine and see better once you reread them. The worst genre would maybe be like murder mysteries or thrillers or something, because like a lot of that hinges on, you know, the mystery of not knowing, but I'm fairly sure there are plenty of thrillers and mysteries that can be read and reread time and time again because the actual story is still compelling even if you know who done it. But I think that would easily be the one that you can point to and say, yeah, not as good on the reread because there's none of that suspense, or there's less suspense because you know how it ends. Number 11 is... Oh, I missed number 9. Number 9 is there a book you've liked more upon reread? And for me, that is the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I did not enjoy this book series the first time I read it. I almost didn't read Six of Crows because I hated this trilogy so much. But then I reread it last year, just in time for the show coming out, and I actually really further appreciated this book, especially the last one, Ruin and Rising. I actually really enjoyed that one now that I knew where it was going. Because again, that's one that kind of almost subverts your expectations with what you think the final amplifier is going to be. Mild spoilers, but I still don't tell you what it is. And kind of once you know that that's coming, it makes more sense, and the ending itself also makes sense within the wider context of the story. But if you're just reading it for the first time and you're like, oh, I want to see what happens and stuff, and it kind of doesn't go the way you think it does feel like a letdown. So I definitely enjoyed that far more upon a reread than the first time I read it. Number 10 is there a book you liked less upon reread? So The Maze Runner is one, and kind of in the same way that I was talking about thrillers and stuff, The Maze Runner is definitely a book where a lot of its interest comes from you not knowing what the fuck is going on. So then upon reread, it's just lost that entire suspense. Like, you know, James Dashner didn't exactly do a very good job of keeping the suspense even if you know what's happening. The entire success of that book really hinged on the audience is confused and we don't know what's going on. Like, you know, I tore through that book because I just wanted to know what was happening, and it was written really well in that regard. But once you know what's happening, it just doesn't hold up. Another one would be the Belgariad by David Edding. This is one that I actually reread a bit last year, and I actually haven't reread the last book. I got as far as the second last, and then I just couldn't bother continuing. Which is kind of like, you know, why I say it's not very good to reread. I did really enjoy it the first time I read it way back in school. It was really good, like, you know, one of my first sort of epic fantasy books alongside Eragon. But yeah, it's just one that I think hasn't really stood the test of time very well, particularly with its women characters, and it's just one that I just found to be just kind of annoying overall, and not one I would reread again. And another one that I wouldn't really reread anymore is The Book Thief. I've tried rereading it, and just because I know it's heavy and it's sad and it's quite a long book, I can't read it anymore. I don't know why. And as well, I think I find the writing style as well to be a bit too heavy and a bit too, I don't know, condensed. So yeah, so that's one that I just cannot find myself rereading anytime soon. Number 11 is If You Reread, let us know a book you'd like to reread before the end of this year. So I would really love to reread Harley in the Sky by Kemi Dawn Bowman. She's one of my favourite authors, and one of her contemporaries, Starfish, is one of my all-time favourites. I've reread her other contemporaries a couple of times before, and I have yet to reread Harley in the Sky. I read this for the first time last year, and I just haven't had time to go back to it. But I badly want to, because it's just such a fantastic story, and I love her writing so much. The one that I'm going to reread is Daughters of Henri by Rennie K. Amayo. The second book to this series comes out in October, so I really want to reread this first book just before that, possibly get a review of it, because I don't think enough people talk about this book, just to remind myself of the story and where we're at in time for going into Descendants of the First. And finally, I also really want to read A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. I haven't read this in about 2 years, and I did really love this book series, and especially since she is now continuing it, I really just want to reread it and see if it still holds up to how much I loved it the first time. And finally, number 12 is Tag Your Friends. So I have no idea if these people reread books in any way, shape or form. I'm just guessing, and I, for a very long time, have always done book tags where I just go, I have nobody to tag, but now that I kind of have people to tag, I'm going to. The first one is Josie Hilsel. She is a new booktuber, and I really love her content. She does lots of really great like wrap-ups and stuff and talking about different books, and I think she does quite like doing book tags, and I believe she has mentioned in book videos and things that she does reread. I might be wrong, so hopefully she wants to do this tag, and if you do, Josie, I hope you do this tag. I tag you. I then also want to tag Steve Talks About Books and stuff. I really like Steve's channel, and yeah, he's tagged me in some stuff before, so I really want to revenge tag him. So, and he's mentioned that in some of his short story things that he's rereading some of these short stories, so I think he does reread, so Steve, I tag you. And finally, Bookaholic Brown Nymph. This is a channel that I've been subscribed to for a while, but for some reason have just only watched a couple of videos here and there, but now I find myself just really watching loads of her videos. I absolutely love her content and the way she talks about books, and just, oh, she's just such a good channel. You definitely need to go and check her stuff out. So if she rereads and wants to do this book tag, feel free to do this. I tag you. And that's it for today. Those are the people that I'm tagging, and those are my answers to this book tag. Again, I will leave a link to the original tag down below. Definitely go check that out and see if you want to do this for yourself. And what do you think of my answers? Do you reread? Have you read any of the books that I've mentioned, and do you think they're good reread quality? Definitely let me know down below in the comments. I would love to hear from you. If you've reached the end of this video, you clearly enjoyed yourself, so you might as well leave a like on it, and feel free to subscribe. I post more or less twice a week. But thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.